Staging is the third animation principle listed in Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston's 1981 classic, The Illusion of Life Disney Animation. Staging is a very broad topic and is arguably the most intertwined with the rest of the principles, so it can be difficult to isolate staging to talk about without also diving into the other 11 principles to some degree. At the very least, I will be changing Principle 3 to be Staging, Clarity, and Readability. Staging, clarity, and readability are all striving for the same thing: clear and appealing shots that direct the audience's attention to what you want them to see. The reason staging is so broad is because it applies to all aspects of the shot: camera position, focal length, character placement, prop placement, silhouette, posing, acting, lighting, color grading, composition, and even guiding the audience's eyes smoothly throughout the scene. So what does it mean to stage a camera? First, we need to understand the purpose of the shot. Are we showing off a big action or an emotion? A big action will warrant pulling the camera back for a wide shot, whereas with an emotional focus, the shot will call for a close-up. The word staging originates from an actual theater stage, so theater rules still apply. In theater, we don't have cameras to take advantage of, but the actors still have the job to convey their emotions not just to the people in the front row, but the people all the way in the back row. In order to do this, they have to exaggerate or overact. The person at the back won't see the tears running down the actor's face. But if the actor cries with their entire body, they'll be effective for the entire audience. We as animators have the same job with our cameras. The wider the camera angle, the broader the action has to be able to be read.
In terms of animation, animators are actors as well. They are fantastic actors. They have to draw from how they feel emotionally about the beat of the scene that they're working on. They work collaboratively.
Once we understand the purpose of our shot, it's time to think about the rule of thirds. Rule of thirds is a common principle taught to photographers and graphic designers, but it's equally as important to animators. The rule of thirds is splitting up the frame both horizontally and vertically, so it's in 9 equal parts. The human eye doesn't naturally look to the very center of the frame, but instead to the 4 intersecting corners surrounding the center square. By keeping this in mind when staging the shot, we can cater to the natural flow of the audience's eyes, leading to an easier viewing experience. We can also observe this through the Fibonacci sequence, also known as the golden ratio, which paved the way for rule of thirds to be an adopted principle of modern art. The golden ratio came from a numerical series discovered by Fibonacci in the 11th century, which ended up representing a phenomenal arc observed all throughout nature and can be witnessed throughout iconic classical art, most notably the Mona Lisa. The golden ratio is referred to by many as the most pleasing arc to the eye. If the shot doesn't have the character's entire body in frame, we also need to think about where the camera is cropping them. Having the edge of camera land on a character's joints, like their neck, elbows, or knees, is a big no-no. This will make them feel amputated, which is a major distraction. Try to keep the camera halfway between joints or on one of the thirds. Silhouette is also a crucial part of the staging process. If you black out the characters and/or objects of your scene, how clear is your posing? Do objects overlap? Can you still read the emotion of the scene? Is the focus of the shot visible? Sometimes there's no way around it, but if you at least attempt to keep objects and gestures open and free from overlapping the body, you'll end up with a much clearer result. Each form should be distinct and fit the purpose of the shot. The clarity of your shot's purpose is more important than realism. At some point, you may encounter an instance where a character needs to look at another character or object, but it isn't appealing from the necessary camera angle. Since clarity trumps realism, it's more important to rotate that character towards the camera and feign their eye direction, even if in 3D space they couldn't possibly be looking in the right place. Always pose in favor of the camera. There should be a clear line of action visible in your camera. The more dynamic the line of action is in your posing, the more appeal your shot will have. Line of action, both in posing and in your action's arc, come back to guiding the audience's eye throughout your scene. Straight lines and smooth curves are easy for the eye to follow, whereas bumpy lines and harsh edges slow the eye down. If we're trying to smoothly guide the audience's eye through the scene, we can't sit next to them and explain where to look. We have to skillfully craft non-verbal cues to guide them. This means having one main action at a time and having any additional actions be complementary, not taking the attention away from the main action. Staging and clarity is also reflected in timing. Shots should be at least 3 frames long for the audience to be able to read it. Under 3 frames will feel like a confusing flicker and take the audience out of the experience. Side note, this is why smears are only 1 to 2 frames, so the audience can feel them without actually seeing them. If a new character or object enters the scene, unless it's a surprise, we should linger on it for a couple of frames to establish what it is before throwing it into the action. If the audience can't tell what something is, they'll be distracted thinking about it until it becomes clear.
The better we, animators, do our jobs, the more invisible we become. The characters become the real ones.
Staging, clarity, and readability is such a broad topic with so many breakable rule sets that it can be fairly difficult to understand early on. It's one of those things to keep revisiting throughout your animation journey to really challenge yourself on what you think you know. It's something that can only truly be understood through practice, repetition, and making mistakes.